marathon in the world, the biannual Plascon Challenge took place from the 14th to the 17th of December in a variety of conditions. The 244-kilometre marathon of endurance and sheer guts started in Port Elizabeth and ended 4 days later in Hamburg, with overnight stops at Woody Cape, Port Alfred and Hamburg. Day 1, 4:15 a.m, and officials, backup crews and the media saw the first group of single skiers off on their awesome haul to Woody Cape. The 80-kilometre course, longest of the 4 days, was set from Blue Water Bay via Jahil Island to Woody Cape, renowned for its monstrous surf. Compared to running the Comrades Marathon every day for 4 days in a row, the Plascon Challenge poses a physical and mental test unparalleled in the world. The unknown factor of beyond, blistered fingers, sunburn, backache, stiffness, paddler's wrist, seasickness and, well, need we say more? As a hot tropical sun warmed the relatively unspoilt natural heritage of Algoa Bay, the last of the double skiers began to feel the heat of the staggered start. The elements always play a vital role in an event such as this, and a comprehensive safety network consisting of an armada of 4x4 vehicles, sophisticated radio backup, helicopters, rubber ducks and deep-sea boats, along with a complete medical backup unit, were essential to ensure that no tragedies occurred. With split-second timing, the world-class doubles of Tony Scott and Malcolm Hall, seen here slipstreaming Sean Rice and Colin Simpkins, set the pace in the doubles event, which in turn was destined to be the most fiercely contested of this year's challenge. But then again, that's not only what the challenge is all about.
Well, the Plascon, besides being a major race out in the surf, I think is most significant for the paddlers in terms of the challenge itself. It's a race for the leaders, but I think for 4 days to be out and brave the elements for a guy is an achievement in his life.
Wise words in the true spirit of the challenge. Also in the running in the doubles were Springboks Lee McGregor and Herman Chalupsky, who set a steady pace in the early stages of the race, good tactics in calm seas. The near windless conditions did not provide competitors with the necessary following winds, thereby negating any possibility of record times. Of the 112 competitors entered, which included 2 Americans and 2 Hawaiians, only 1 competitor did not finish the punishing first leg. 29-year-old Russell Tucker withdrew following stomach cramps and tendinitis, figures that clearly demonstrate the proficiency of our lifesavers. Content to finish day 1 in their own time, Michael Reynolds and Andre Steyn took a welcome brunch break as Neptune's children played. With Woody Cape, eastern tip of the Alexandria Dunefield beckoning, McGregor and Chalupsky made their move for the final sprint home. Split-second timing, incessant energy and endurance of the bionic kind gave this duo a 2.5-minute edge over their nearest rivals, Tony Scott and Malcolm Hall.
I'm very pleased. I didn't expect to win it by, Lee and myself didn't expect to win it by 5 minutes. It was very flat conditions and they're very hard paddling. And we just basically want to just hang in today because it was such a long day and we haven't really done the training for a day like this. And so we actually ecstatic that we came through and won by 5 minutes today.
Well, it's a long way to go and so far fantastic. We've still got another 3 days and the worst one is over. That's the one I was worried about. So I'd say we just got to hang in there for another 3 days.
And hanging in there on an outside set in the final stages was 25-year-old Springbok Oscar Chalupsky. It's easy to see why he is rated as the best in the world. Always hot on his heels, fellow Italian and Springbok Mark Lewin also put in a sterling performance in the singles event, but was not quite a match for the bionic man and finished a respectable 2.5 minutes behind Oscar Chalupsky. Overall times were almost an hour slower than the record set in 1986 when larger seas prevailed.
It's a good day to win because once you've got this under your belt, you know you've done the longest stretch of the whole marathon, and it's good psychological victory over the other opponents because they've got to try and catch up the times they lost today. It was really tough out there. It was 6.5 hours and it was hot and there was no following sea and I was just tapping along. And only at the end did I start going really hard. But I felt it. I definitely have done something today.
And that something was worth the effort, because the likes of Mark Lewin and the Americans were always waiting in the wings.
Long way. 6.5 hours.
And if he felt it was a long way, how must these guys have felt? For others, though, it was just another day of fun in the sun, as Algoa Bay also gave of its best. Results for the first day gave Oscar Chalupsky a 2.5-minute lead over Mark Lewin, with their nearest rival a staggering 10 minutes behind. In the doubles, McGregor and Chalupsky also had 2.5 minutes on Scott and Hall, with Rice and Simpkins in a contentious third spot. The second day dawned with the competitors well rested. A light easterly maintained the small swell, no doubt to the relief of many. 2 years ago had been a different kettle of fish. With a half an hour to spare before the mass start, the doubles were getting in that extra touch. And with very little separating the top 3 teams, the competition was sure to be fierce. One miscalculation and the lead could change hands. And changing hands is probably what a lot of the paddlers would have liked to do, paddler's wrist being one of the worst physical ailments suffered by the competitors. Day 2 was certainly going to sort the men out from the boys, even though it was a relatively short stage, 45 kilometres to Port Alfred, with a 10-minute stopover at Bushman's River mouth. Spearheading the singles, Oscar Chalupsky set the pace in the early stages, with Mark Lewin and the Americans hot on his heels. Many hours of training are put into an event of this stature by the top guys, with carbohydrate loading before the event the order of the day. Specially formulated liquids fuel their constant thirst, and trained physiotherapists are used for massage, the saving grace between finishing or not. Into the battle zone, and the top guns in the doubles were pacing each other to the limits. Rice and Simpkins, Scott and Hall, McGregor and Chalupsky in one of the most fiercely contested struggles in the history of the event. Silhouetted against an ancient sky, the Dias Cross gazed across the vast expanse of Indian Ocean, almost in homage to these modern-day seafarers. By now, the paddlers were spreading out, leaving only the ocean, the ski, aching muscles, and the mind as the common denominators. We asked the Ironman himself about what goes through his mind while paddling.
Firstly, while you've got competition around there, you're just thinking about how you're going to manipulate this guy and work on his mental build-up. You tell him, oh, geez, is your juice very hot? Mine's feeling really nice and cold now. And you just play and think, I mean, you have to really be, your mind must be totally on top of his mind. That's what you've got to keep thinking of. And then towards the end, when you drop the guys or you by yourself, then it's just you against yourself, basically. It's your mind up against your body, because your body is getting very sore. And your mind's saying, hey, stop. And you just got to make it. And then you start concentrating on trying to pull and trying to see the finishing line.
The 10-minute stopover at Bushman's River provided the paddlers with the necessary revitalization and medical attention. But the beauty and tranquility of the Eastern Cape was, however, overshadowed by the drama of the next leg. 25-year-old Andrew Shaw from Port Elizabeth completed the stage to Port Alfred on his double ski alone when his partner Albert Robinson had to be rescued from the craft following severe seasickness. He qualified as a single competitor and continued the 4-day challenge on a single ski. Great sportsmanship in a great event as the challenge took its toll. Up front, however, the Chalupskis continued to dominate, with Oscar having built up a 7-minute lead over Mark Lewin. In the doubles section, Herman Chalupsky and Lee McGregor set a new record by 6 seconds. This gave them an overall lead of almost 6 minutes over nearest rivals Tony Scott and Malcolm Hall. Hot on their heels, however, by only 44 seconds, were Sean Rice and Colin Simpkins. Day 3 held the promise of yet another great battle, a battle that originated way back in 1972, when one man paddled the grueling 244 kilometres alone. That was John Woods, who challenged a friend, ultramarathon runner John Ball, to the unusual race, Woods on water, ball on tar. And it is in that spirit that the challenge lives on. The course for day 3 was set between Port Alfred and Hamburg, 68 kilometres of hard paddling with a 10-minute stopover at the Great Fish River. The mass start at the crack of dawn saw a freshening easterly moderately increase the swell size. A cold front had, however, also moved in overnight, bringing much-needed rain to the area. Out front, a change of leader in the singles. Mark Lewin made an early break and was looking his best. In hot pursuit, Oskar Chalupsky, who, knowing full well the strength of Lewin's performance, took a short cut into the 10-minute stopover at the Fish River. Oskar has an outstanding knowledge of the sea and its many moods, and is renowned for taking chances where others often fear to tread. Oskar had been assisting his younger brother Walter in the early stages of day 3, nursing him into maintaining his third position, when Lewin made his break to finish 2 minutes ahead of Chalupsky at the stopover. A wave rider of the highest caliber, Oskar's shortcuts often pay off. This time, though, the wave got the better of him. After a brief respite, the pace up front was once again electric, with Oskar determined to make up for lost time by pacing himself with the doubles, in this case Lee McGregor and younger brother Herman Chalupsky. But the experienced Tony Scott and Malcolm Hall had also made an early break in the doubles event and were head down and determined to keep it that way. Although still overall leaders, McGregor and Chalupsky were not taking any chances and set a blistering pace for this stage. And all the time, Mr. Challenge himself, Oskar Chalupsky, kept up the slip, a remarkable feat of endurance and strength. Brief reminders of the strength and ferocity of the Indian Ocean, as Tony Scott and Malcolm Hall were first in at Hamburg, albeit by a mere 30 seconds. Their overall time, however, still stood at 5 minutes slower than the lead team of McGregor and Chalupsky, and to clinch the title, they would have to pull out all the stops on day 4. But the day's glory belonged to Oskar Chalupsky, who, after having paced the doubles for most of the stage to Hamburg, had taken a remarkable 10 minutes out of Mark Lewin, giving him an overall lead of 17 minutes at the end of day 3. To be the unofficial champion of the world is an achievement that did not come easy and is even more difficult to conquer.
I was very happy. It was really hard. This is the hardest day for me. I raced the doubles the whole way, and I pulled hard. I mean, I caught up Mark Lewin, who was about 2 minutes ahead of me at the halfway stage, and I took 10 minutes out of him. And if I'd stayed with the doubles all the way, I would have beaten him by about 17 minutes, which is a long way ahead of the next single. It was really hard. I mean, the doubles were going very fast, and I was just hanging in, until I eventually stopped just outside Hamburg.
Besides the duel for first place, there was rivalry aplenty in the rest of the field. Oldest competitor, 51-year-old Paul Chalupsky, was well placed in the top 20, while two of the Americans, Bob Toogood and Mitch Kahn, were among the top 10, despite a lack of knowledge of local conditions. Day 4 held promise of a great finale. Day 4 dawned with a clear sky, a freshening easterly, and a huge swell. The pressure changes of the cold front had caused a large ground swell, and for the first time in the history of the challenge, the organisers were forced to change the course for the fourth and final day. Instead of paddling into the wind from Hamburg to East London, the course was reversed, allowing paddlers a fairer chance of finishing. With final preparations well underway at East London's Orient Beach, the tension was mounting. With big swells surging around the breakwater, a staggered start saw competitors facing the most awesome conditions of the 4 days. Unparalleled in its demands, the Plascon Challenge is a conquest of strength, a duel between man and nature, but above all, a challenge of man against himself. To be able to complete an event of this nature is an achievement that even Neptune would have been proud of. The doubles were having an easier time of it, with the following swell allowing for some long slides. The singles, on the other hand, were not having it quite as easy and had to pull hard for most of the way. At Kidd's Beach, the 10-minute stopover was cancelled due to the large swell and had seconds and spectators alike looking out to sea with apprehension and respect. But with one of the finest safety networks on the constant lookout for any signs of distress, the stage was set for one of the most exciting finishes in the history of the challenge. With only 5 minutes separating the top 2 doubles, the pressure was on. With precision, timing and rhythm, Lee McGregor and Herman Chalupsky were going to be a formidable duo to beat. But with conditions the way they were, anything was possible. The experienced Scott and Hall knew this only too well and made the most of the running swell. Stroke for stroke, second by second, they were narrowing the gap. Could they clinch the title at the 11th hour? In the singles, Oscar was still way out in front on overall time, 17 minutes to be exact, and revelled in the bigger conditions. But the bigger conditions were taking their toll at Hamburg as the first of the competitors to leave East London began arriving. Surfskis are built for paddling speed alone and are therefore not the ideal wave performance vehicles. Just look at the power of this wave as the ski nosedived. The 2 to 3 meter bone crushers were giving the competitors the final confrontation. No challenge has ever been easy, and this year's was no exception. Even for Mr. Challenge himself, Oscar Chalupsky, the conditions were proving to be arduous. But it was this 50-meter dash by Lee McGregor and Herman Chalupsky that will be remembered as this year's highlight, a dash that clinched them the doubles title by only 46 seconds.
It's one heck of a race. It's the worst I've ever been in my life, but at least it's over, and it's not a matter of winning. We finished, and I think there's a lot of other guys here that are just as relieved as I am.
And would they be back in 2 years' time to defend their title?
You should ask me that question in a year's time once I've forgotten about this race.
In the singles event, Oscar Chalupsky took the laurels by a staggering 24 minutes.
It was very nice. It's nice to win it again. Last year I wasn't here. I enjoyed winning it. It's about 34 minutes, a good margin. Now I can't wait to get back to my wife and have a nice holiday.
These then the highlights of the 1988 Plascon Challenge, an event where at the end of the day everyone who completed was a winner. For the challenge is not merely a race, but rather a personal test of courage and endurance, an achievement that only those who have made it will fully understand.